All right, all right, all right. What's up, everybody? So today we are going to be continuing with the review of the discussion between Spencer Case and JPA on moral realism. So let's get into it. This is not the typical time for me to stream, so I don't know who's going to show up. We'll see. But yeah, let's get into it. Okay, got to find the video. It is right here. Bam. And we're picking up where we left off. Let me just fiddle with some settings on the video. That's where I want it. Okay, good. All right. So, hey, what's up, Newburn? Have you been around the channel before? I don't recognize the name, but welcome, and you get 1,000 land salute. So good. Read your. Which one? I got a lot of them. The most recent one, the subjectivism one. It's not that common for me to get people coming over from Substack over to here. Cool. Awesome. All right. So yeah, I'm over on Substack as well. For anybody here on YouTube, you can go check that out. In fact, I'll say this now. So if you check the links in the description, first of all, you'll get a link to the video I'm reviewing, and you should go watch the video. Give JPA the view. If you go over there, leave a comment, but be polite if you do. More engagement is good for everybody. Get this meta ethics content pushed up in the algorithm. I guess it's not going to get very far. This isn't the stuff people want to see. But yeah, I certainly don't want people to go over there and be rude or dislike videos and like maliciously or anything like that. So go check that out. And I have a bunch of other links. You could find links to my Substack and links to my Discord community and links to like where you could support the channel if you want to and all that stuff. So go check that out and like the video if you haven't already. I rarely say that stuff. I don't like saying that stuff. I don't like feeling like I'm trying to sell something. But yeah, okay, let's get into it. All right, we're going to continue where we left off.
Against error theory. Yeah, that's a great title for a paper. Well, Matt Lutz will say, he's like, well, we care about the things we care about, and I care about, and when I go about my day-to-day life, using moral language, speaking with the ignorant, really, I'm just saying I should be interpreted charitably. I should, or I guess, people like you and me who are privy to these sorts of arguments should understand that what he means is these are just things that I care about.
Yeah.
One thing I find really strange.
No one says this about Hitler, right? Like, Hitler just happened to care about some things that were different from what I cared. Like, no one thinks that that's a satisfactory account of Hitler,
No.
But so this is what's bizarre about this. A satisfactory account of what? So if the account just stops there, if you just say, look, there are facts about what I care about and I act on them, and there's facts about what other people care about and they act on them, then it's trivially true that even if you take evil dictators, I don't know how much it affects viewership or anything if you mention specific names or specific people, but if an evil dictator had some goal or desire, and they were motivated to act on it, then it's trivially true that they had that desire and were motivated to act on it. That by itself says nothing about my attitude towards it. So I would disapprove of the evil dictator doing evil things. So they approve of doing the evil things they want to do. I disapprove. And then there just aren't further facts. There's no further fact that what they're doing is bad independent of my appraisal of it or your appraisal of it. Aren't our appraisals enough? And if not, why wouldn't they be? So, for JPA or Spencer or anybody else that is a moral realist, just imagine moral realism is not true. You strip away the moral facts. Now, this might be difficult if you think that they're necessary for some reason. But if it's possible to imagine a world where there's no moral facts, and then you're still observing, the bad things that, World War II bad people do, wouldn't you still disapprove of them? Like, I don't really care whether they're objectively wrong or not. I'm still against them. I don't want bad things to happen to people. So it doesn't need to be that. There needs to be this intermediary step where, okay, I already don't want people to torture and kill and genocide and do bad things. If in addition, it was objectively true that they ought not do them, I'd be like, great. Anyway, let's get back to stopping them from doing these things because these things are bad. So the moral facts are motivationally superfluous to me. I wouldn't care whether they were the facts or not. So I would like to better understand the psychology of someone like Spencer or JPA Like what they're thinking, what their reasoning here is, because when they say that account is unsatisfactory, well, I understand it's not satisfactory to them because they want to be able to say, and because they believe and they think it's true, that evil World War II dictators were in fact doing something objectively morally wrong. Okay, well, if they weren't, too bad. Like the account doesn't need to satisfy your belief if it's an account which holds that your belief is mistaken. So if an atheist just says, look, I just don't think God answers prayers and I don't think there's an afterlife, someone that is really committed to prayer answering and afterlives might say, well, it's not satisfactory because there's prayers in it and afterlife. Yeah, it's not satisfactory if that's what you want. But what is, I don't know, that's that song. You can't always get what you want. So maybe there just aren't facts like that. It's certainly not the case. Not that they're suggesting this, that like what we want to be the case is somehow going to be an important factor in what is the case. Like maybe reality just isn't how we want. So like, too bad. 1 second. All right, I'm back. Oh, right. Who else we got here? That's Timmy. Unfortunately, Timmy, you're not first. You're second. So you get 500 Lance loot. And Troyer, you're here with an Ola. So you get 250 Lance loot. Goblin Lord, you're a little slow this time. So that's too bad. Newberm has a comment. I was also watching your review video with curiosity. Do we desire our own pleasure? That was a discussion with, was it Alex O'Connor? Who was that? Alex O'Connor and Rationality Rules. Was it that discussion? Yeah, I think it was. And wanted to ask if we can justify our preferences being reduced to pleasure and pain with thought experiments. You're asking the wrong person. No, I don't. So I would draw a distinction between preferences. You can have a kind of terminal or non-instrumental desire. So you could desire something as a kind of foundational desire. You don't desire it for any other purpose or end. It's just that is what you really want. And then you have instrumental desires or non-terminal desires. And those serve the purpose of achieving your desire. So if I desire to quench my thirst, and really that's kind of an instrumental desire. I desire to not be uncomfortable. I desire to not suffer. So one way in which I could suffer is to be physically uncomfortable. One way I could be physically uncomfortable is to be thirsty. And so one desire I have, one non-instrumental desire, is to avoid suffering. And it does cash out in pleasure and pain, incidentally, in this case. So one means of reducing, you could call pain or suffering in this case, would be to quench my thirst. And one means of quenching my thirst would be to drink something. So here I have some seltzer water. And so an instrumental desire I might have would be to drink from this cup. And that instrumental desire, or you could construct in preferences, instrumental preference serves the non-instrumental preference of avoiding suffering. But I don't take it to be the case that non-instrumental or terminal desires or preferences require justification. I take them to be descriptive facts about an agent in the same way, like hair color. Like I don't have hair to have a color. I mean, it's like some brownish, I guess. I'm always arguing with my wife. She says my hair is blonde. That doesn't look blonde to me. Wait, where's my hair? I'm turning the wrong way. It's not blonde. So it's called brown. So like, it's a fact that I have brown hair, but I'm mostly bald. It wouldn't make sense to say that's like, that's like incorrect in the sense of it being like, sorry, not incorrect, unjustified. Like you're not justified in what? In having the hair that I have? Like I just do. It doesn't make sense to talk about it being justified or unjustified. And the same way, if I happen to have a preference, like if my favorite color is purple, which it is, what would it make? It wouldn't make any sense to say, well, what's your justification? I just like purple. I don't require a justification. And I view moral values in the same way. I don't think it makes sense to ask for justifications for them. So I don't think you need to, or could even in principle, justify a preference being reduced to pleasure and pain. Either all of your terminal values or terminal desires just are to avoid pleasure and pain, and you don't have any others, or not. And that's just going to be a psychological fact about you. So that would be my view on that. Okay. Let's keep going.
But he'll say, no. I really care about not committing mass murder.
Whoopsie.
And
Yeah.
so
I mean, one
of
movie.
course,
Sorry.
should understand that what he means is these are just things that I care about.
Yeah.
One thing I find really
No one
strange.
says this about Hitler, right? Like, Hitler just happened to care about some things that were different from what I cared. Like, no one thinks that that's a satisfactory account of Hitler, you know.
No. But he'll say.
So yeah. So another thing to say about that is a person I wouldn't just say, yeah, I have my values and evil people have their values and that's just how it is. I would also say, yeah, I have my values and other people have different values and I hate some of those people's values. I think they're awful and I don't want them to have those values. And if they're peaceful people, like, just some person down the street that holds a different view on I don't know, abortion or something, I'll talk to them. Oh, I don't agree with your view. Let's have a discussion about it. But if the person's like actively genociding people, then you got to try to stop the person from doing it. I would just go, yeah, that's just their values. Nothing about being an anti-realist, including being a relativist, requires or entails or even strongly implies. I don't even think it implies indifference to other people's actions. It just doesn't. So JPA seems to be alluding to something like that, and I just don't think that's a feature of anti-realism.
Hey, no. I really care about like not committing mass murder. And
yeah.
so,
I mean, what I'm motivating there is just the thought that most of us are, if we're not trying to defend an implausible meta ethic, most of us want to say like Hitler just got some stuff wrong, right? Like he was just very obviously mistaken, and not just empirically mistaken. He was morally mistaken.
Yeah. So I think they can account for the I think they reactions against genuinely wicked people by just saying, I just really dislike those behaviors, even though I'm not attributing any metaphysical moral status to any of this.
But then what they can't say is that it's good, like
that's
objectively that I have those concerns.
That's right. They can't say that.
Yeah. So what if they can't say that? Nubermass, can't you feel good when you see that? That's going to be an empirical question, whether that's why you want that or not. I don't take it to be some sort of necessary fact about agency that anything you want must be for the purposes of obtaining pleasure or avoiding pain. I don't think so. I mean, unless you construe those so broadly that they just are the results of whatever agency that an agent is acting upon, in which case it's just trivial. So you would have to cash out what you mean by pleasure and pain and then see whether or not, as a matter of fact, agents do only act that way or could. And if you have some sort of a priori argument for why they only could, I don't know what that would look like. So, I mean, the bottom line is I just think you could have non-instrumental or terminal desires other than to have pleasure or avoid pain.
Which seems like a cost, but also, this is the point I wanted to get.
Oh, sorry, that slipped past.
And what they can't say is that it's good, like objectively that I have those concerns.
That's right. They can't say that, which seems like a cost.
See, why does Spencer think this? So a cost of an anti-realist view is I can't say things are objectively wrong. How is that a cost? I don't think things are objectively wrong. So like there would only be a cost if someone is like, I do think unless you thought there was some sort of antecedent reason why that's a more plausible view, all else being equal, but then for some other set of considerations, it's not true. But I don't think that. Or perhaps you consider it a cost in the sense of it being desirable. But I don't think that. So nothing about rejecting moral realism or not being able to say, consistent with your position, that something is objectively wrong seems like a cost to me. What is the cost? Like if the cost is, but then that makes your position less plausible. No, it doesn't, because I don't think realism is plausible. So there's something very weird about the framing that Spencer and a lot of contemporary meta-ethicists take, where a lot of them seem to agree that there's some sort of presumption or preference in favor of realism, and that you can only abandon it grudgingly. And I don't abandon it grudgingly. I don't even abandon it. I don't endorse it. I never endorse. Well, I can't recall ever endorsing it. I don't know. Maybe when I was 13. I don't know. It's so far back in my memory. I don't know. I mean, I used to be a Christian. I don't know whether I endorsed realism or not. I don't think so though. What's the cost? So here's the thing about philosophical positions. Not only can you dispute other people's positions, you can also dispute which position is a cost. A person could genuinely believe from their point of view that there's no cost in rejecting the idea that there's an external world. Whether something is a cost is itself contingent on one's own positions or one's own assessment of which things are plausible or not. Nobody is obligated to agree that there's some sort of ground on which we all have to agree which positions are paying which sorts of costs or not. That is itself an open matter of philosophical dispute. I think it would be a cost to endorse realism, a pretty heavy one.
But also, this is the point I wanted to get to about this, which is, why is it that all of the things that they purport to care most deeply about personally, purely subjectively, correspond so well with conventional morality in so many different cases, right? Like, why is it that you don't ever encounter self-described error theorists who one of their most deep-seated commitments is like a dislike for some kind of food, and they want everyone else to dislike it, or something that would be noticeably morally bizarre, right? Is it just a coincidence that all of these people's most deep-seated desires just happen to correspond so well with basic morality?
I mean, we could flip this and say, what a coincidence that our inclinations towards thinking that there's a basic morality happen to accord with what we think with what realists think the objective moral facts are. What a coincidence. One, first, I don't know that there are that many error theorists. Two, even if, among the few philosophers that are error theorists, so what is it, 5% of the people that responded to the Phil paper survey? It's not that many people. We're talking a few hundred people responded to that survey. So how many error theorists are there in the world? 10,000, 100,000? There's not that many. Have we surveyed them on whether or not they have any weird preferences that they really, really, really care about among those people? I mean, how many people that have super bizarre preferences? Well, first of all, how many people have super arbitrary, weird preferences that they want to impose on other people? How many people? How many people think no one should ever wear the color purple? I don't know anybody with super duper weird preferences like that, or I do, and they're not telling me, because when people have super duper weird preferences, I mean, a few things. One, there's going to be a question about the number of people that have super weird preferences. Two, there's going to be a question about the number of people that have super weird preferences that it's not just that they really, really, really care about them. So Spencer is already not really doing a great job characterizing what I think an error theorist would say, and what I can say as an anti-realist, what an anti-realist would say. It's not a question of whether I really, really, really care about certain things or not. It's a question of the scope of the thing that I care about. So I really, really, really like certain kinds of food and certain kinds of music. Like, I listen to Tool all the time. I really like Tool. But I don't have the view that everyone should be forced to listen to Tool, and that you're not allowed to listen to Taylor Swift because I think Taylor Swift's music sucks, which I do. I don't have that attitude. I don't care that much what music you listen to. Now, it does actually bum me out a bit that certain kinds of music is popular, like Taylor Swift, and that the music I prefer isn't more mainstream, because then I could associate with more people, or like more, I run into people, like, I don't know, there'd be more concerts, there'd be more people trying to emulate that kind of music, there'd be more Tool-like bands out there. So it actually is the case that I would prefer if more people shared my preferences, because it would actually make things better for me. But it's not something that I feel inclined to impose on people. Like, I don't want there to be laws banning Taylor Swift music. So I just don't care that much. So one, it's not a matter of whether you have a really, really, really strong preference. It's a matter of whether your preference is a preference that is a preference about other people's conduct or not. So do I have, like, am I super passionate about people, I don't know, not running red lights? Not really. Like, imagine if people, like, if they're stopped at a red light and they look all around and they're very careful, and then they go through the red light if they don't see anybody. Do I want people to do that? No, I don't want people to do that. Am I going to go on a campaign to stop people from doing that? No, because there's like worse things in the world. But it's still a question about what I want other people to do. So for whatever reason, when critics of realists, typically, that are critics of anti-realist views, subjectivist views, error theoretic views, where the error theorist goes, look, I don't think there's moral facts, but I do care about stuff. Do they not understand? Some stuff I care about what I do, and then some stuff it's about what other people do. Like, I don't really care how other people dress. Like, if they want to wear a totally different style of outfit than me, I don't care. I do care if they want to, like, set buildings on fire, or kill me, or steal my wallet, or I don't know, pee in public. I don't want people to do that. So I have preferences about how I act, and then I have preferences about how other people act. It's not about strength. It's about preferences about how other people act. And so my point here is that you can have moral preferences about how others act that aren't particularly strong, and you could have very strong preferences about your own conduct that are not applicable to other people. So It's scope. It's not strength. I'm belaboring the point. In fact, I belabor the point so much I forgot where he was going with this. Let's take it back.
Right.
Those deep-seated desires just happen to correspond so well with basic morality.
Oh, right. Right. So the idea here, it seems to be, and maybe he'll say more about this, that there's something curious and suspicious about the fact that error theorists seem to have conventional moral standards. So a few things. And sorry, they have conventional moral standards, and two, they don't seem to be advocating for like the imposition of things they really, really, really care about on other people. So one, I draw a distinction between really, really, really caring about things and the scope of what things care about, people care about. So first, there aren't going to be that many people with super duper weird preferences. So there's that. Two, even if they have super duper weird preferences, not all those preferences will be, you could say, universal or broader in scope than a personal desire. So a lot of error theorists might have like a really weird preference for like how to dress, or they might have, whatever it might be. They might like some weird food. They might like, I don't know, anchovy flavored ice cream or something. They could have really weird food preferences. But if they don't care to impose those on other people, then it doesn't matter how much they really care about the thing. It's not a matter of what they want to impose. Three, there's going to be social ramifications to them advocating for these things. So even if they have them, they might shut up about it. So if you really wanted everyone in the world to be forced to, I don't know, sing Taylor Swift songs, like everybody should be required to do Taylor Swift karaoke, what's going to happen if you go out and advocate for that and you're like in an academic position at a university? You're going to sound like a crazy person because you would be, and no one's going to listen to you. You're going to sound insane because you are. Right. So none of us are going to listen to you. So there's going to be social costs to doing this. So you have a very small selection of people who are error theorists. Two, even if they have these weird preferences, we haven't done certain, maybe they would admit, they'd say, yeah, I want to force everybody to sing Taylor Swift karaoke if you survey them. Did Spencer survey them? No, I didn't. Nobody surveyed them. So we don't know if they think this. Three, there would be significant social costs to them going for these sorts of things or expressing these sorts of things. Four, if they do have weird preferences, they're probably not preferences for how other people advocate not really preferences for what other people do. And then five, it's probably not that common for them to have them in the first place. So there's a whole, you could do like a Drake equation here. Like what's the number of actual error theorists? Of those, how many would pay the social cost to express these preferences? Of those, how many would have these preferences? Of those, how many would want to impose these? So is it a coincidence that you don't see a bunch of error theorists out there aggressively, calling for a ban on Taylor Swift or conversely demanding everybody sing Taylor Swift? No, but if there was like a billion error theorists, maybe it would be weird if none of them were. But as far as this be like happening to coincide, we're all subject to very similar enculturation, social upbringing. We have shared evolved psychology. So error theorists are just like other people. That I probably don't have radically different moral standards from Spencer Case. There's probably issues that we disagree on, but I don't have super weird moral preferences. Like I don't have a moral preference that like every Tuesday everybody engage in like Pokemon duels or something. Just as a matter of general psychological fact, people just aren't really like that. And then by the way, I was giving that sort of like, as you go down, the numbers get lower and lower and lower. If someone was like that, if someone did have like a deranged psychology, how likely is it for that person to become a successful academic, become an error theorist, and then go advocating for error theory, and in addition advocate for their like whatever insane idea that they have? It's not that likely. So there might be a bunch of people that have insane preferences that they do want to impose on other people, but it's not going to be that likely that they're going to become successful academics, philosophers that become morally anti-realist and advocate for error theory. Not the least of which, I mean, I'll just show you real quickly how even if the person became a philosopher, just wait, we'll just get to the 2020 Phil Papers results. So even if they did, let's look at specializations. Let's see. Where is it? The survey population. Why isn't it going immediately to it? Respondent demographics. Here it is. Give me 1 second. Got to fiddle with some settings here. Okay. So as you can see, out of the 1,785 respondents, only 228 specialize in meta ethics. I think if you look at percentage, it's 13%. Is it 228 out of 1785? Yeah, 12.8%. So I accidentally minimized the tab I'm in. Okay. So a little under 13% are meta ethicists, 228 out of all of the respondents. So of those, now we could, now I will locate the, so again, 228 out of the 1785 respondents. Now we're going to look at the number that are error theorists. All right. Okay, so here we are. Accidentally clicked something. No, I clicked on the wrong thing. Oh my gosh. Okay, 1 second. I'm never as smooth with just looking stuff up as I would like to be. Okay, error theory. So you could see only 5.27% of the respondents endorse error theory. Now, assuming that, well, we don't know. Well, we could actually look by specialization. So let's do that. Area specialization, meta ethics, accept or lean towards error theory. Okay, so it's a little higher when you look at specialists. So 7.27. So what is 7.27? Let's assume all 228 responded. 1 second. Yeah, so we've got in this sample, it looks like we've got 16.57 error theorists. Okay, so let's round that up. So maybe 17 people out of 1,785 were error theorists. So and let's say what's the actual number of error theorists within the field? I mean, they surveyed 2,000 people. How many people are philosophers? Let's say it's 30,000. So what do we multiply that by 15? So what did I say? 16 or 17? Let's be generous and say it's 17. 17 by what was the number? 15. So there's 255 error theorists. So none of them have weird preferences. What a surprise. I mean, like we're talking about such a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people. Is it really a surprise if we haven't found any advocating for something weird? This is assuming that they're not advocating for something weird. Has anybody checked? Like, I don't know whether Matt Lutz, is really wants to ban Taylor Swift. Maybe he would. No, I don't think so. But the point is that like Spencer's dealing with a very tiny, like a tiny, tiny, tiny insular group of people. Now, of course, I'm being a little unfair there because I'm only talking about academic philosophers. But if there are a bunch of error theorists out in the general population, how would we know and how would we get information on what they're advocating for? So we're talking about a tiny group of people that we wouldn't even know if they had these views if they had them. So I don't know what Spencer's, I don't think he's got a good point here. Okay, let's bring him back.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why would that be? Like you would think.
Or even that there's a kind of rational structure to them in the first place, you might think somewhat surprising, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like, why not just have what seemed like a very bizarre collection of intense concerns?
Why not? Because we just don't have a bizarre collection of intense concerns. Why would JPA or Spencer think that error theorists or anti-realists would have any more bizarre set of concerns than they themselves do? Why? Why would they?
So, like, if you think of, it's actually good. It's good, I think, to think here about like discussed reactions that we recognize have no moral content.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, Aboriginal Australian people eating larvae, like these large larvae that they pull out of logs, like that seems really gross to me.
Yeah.
but I have no temptation to say that they're doing something wrong. In fact, that seems like it makes sense of how you would get protein in that harsh environment.
Yeah.
You know, so we recognize that, like, okay, we have an emotional reaction here, but it's not like a moral thing.
Hmm.
And I think the philosophical error theorists who don't want to be like functionally nihilists, they end up making this distinction too in practice, right? Like they have some like aesthetic reactions or just bare preferences that they don't project moral reactions onto, or don't use as a basis for condemning.
Yeah. So some of my concerns are cashed out in terms of other people's conduct, and some aren't. If people want to eat bugs or whatever, I don't care
I mean, other people, and I want to know, like, well, why not?
because I don't care. Okay, so okay, let's take some of my moral concerns. I don't want people to like set me and my family on fire, and I don't want people to randomly set other people on fire. Why? Well, because it would hurt if I was set on fire. So I don't want to be set on fire. It would make me sad if they set my family on fire, and angry and furious and upset and distraught and devastated. So I don't want them to do that because I don't want to have those experiences. And I don't want to live in a world where people randomly set one another on fire because one, that increases the odds that I and my family get set on fire. And two, that would just suck. I don't want to live in a world like that. Why would I want to live in a world like that? They go outside and maybe people are going to get set on fire and I'm going to have to deal with that. I would feel bad for the victims. I don't want other people to be set on fire. I don't want other people to suffer. It would put me at risk and it would make life suck for me and everyone else. And I don't want life to suck for me. I don't want life to suck for everybody else. Now, there's a cascade of hierarchical concerns that I have that move ever downward, where, of course, I'm a bit more concerned about myself than about other people. And I'm a bit more concerned about my friends and family and the people I care about than strangers. But ideally, nobody would suffer. Like if it would take no effort at all for me to like push a button and nobody suffers, I would push the button because I don't want people to suffer. Now, when it comes to what like color people prefer to paint their bedroom or something, I just don't give a shit. I don't care. So I don't want those people to be on fire, both for you could say selfish and non-selfish reasons. But I also don't care what color their bedroom is because it doesn't have any impact on me. And all else being equal, if people get to paint their bedroom the color that they want, they're probably going to be happier doing that. Good. I wouldn't be happier if their bedroom was the color I prefer. I don't care. I'm not going to see it. So I don't care. So there's things I care about, and some of the things I care about are they end up manifesting in other people's conduct, and some don't. So what is mysterious about this? I'm actually puzzled as to how Spencer could be puzzled by this. Why would I care about other people doing something I find disgusting? I don't have to suffer through it. Right now, people are probably eating all kinds of things I wouldn't want to eat. So how is that affecting me? It's not affecting me. And right now, people are out like murdering people. That does affect me, and it affects the victims of murder in ways that I don't want. So, if someone's eating food I find gross, but they're enjoying it, great. I'm glad they're enjoying it. But if people are out murdering other people, that sucks for the victims of the murder, and it sucks for me, and it sucks for my family, and it sucks for the people I care about. It sucks for everybody. So what is this? Like, to me, I'm looking at this and like he's expressing puzzlement at the psychology of people. Philosophers love things that are obvious. It's obvious what the difference is. One of the things can negatively impact me, and one of the things can't. One of the things involves things happening to people that I don't want to happen, like them suffering unnecessarily, and one of them doesn't. People eating food that they like doesn't cause those people to suffer unnecessarily. Now, if you say, but what if people eat a bunch of food that does cause them to suffer unnecessarily? Well, then I think that that's bad. Now, I have to weigh, like, for instance, people might want to eat a bunch of bacon and drink a bunch of Coca-Cola. That's probably not healthy for them. But like, I have to weigh, do I want people to be able to go buy what food they want versus other moral considerations? Maybe I would ban certain foods or restrict access to certain foods. I'm not like super opposed to like extra taxes or making it harder to get cigarettes because I think they're bad for people. But I don't feel that way about people eating bread. I don't care if people eat bread. Now, if you say, but what if, then fine, I'm going to be responsive to empirical considerations about what harms people. And I'm going to weigh those considerations against whatever harm imposition or restrictions would have on those people. I think the world generally goes better for everybody if people aren't like, if we don't I don't know, have this make everybody's decisions for them. People need a degree of personal prerogative or liberty to do things. So I'm going to weigh one thing against the other. And so it's all coming down to, I'm deliberating about what kind of world I want to live in, what kind of experiences I want to have, and what conditional on my values, what kind of world I want there to be. There's nothing mysterious about this. So if Spencer finds this mysterious, I find it mysterious that he finds it mysterious. What does he find mysterious about this? Well, let's see what else he has to say.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it just seems like an amazing coincidence that all of your strongest subjective reactions just correspond to something like common sense morality. Like,
it's not a coincidence. The preferences just have a different profile. They have different features to them.
without even one really weird deviation. You'd expect.
So again, one, there could be weird deviations, and maybe there are. Two, why would we think that there would be weird deviations in the first place, given our generally shared psychology? And three, there's nothing particularly coincidental or mysterious about this. If Spencer thinks that there's something strange going on and there's implications of this, I want to see the rationale laid out a bit more explicitly. What exactly is the issue here? So if I, as an anti-realist, and let's just say I'm playing an error theorist, because I could just put on an error theorist hat for a moment. Okay, yeah, I don't have weird preferences as an error theorist. What's the problem?
There to be at least one. Like, you'd expect somebody to say, like, pineapple.
He says you'd expect there to be at least one. Why would you expect there to be at least one? Why? What is the basis of the expectation?
Pizza is just wrong, and mean it in the way that, like, wife beating is wrong. If all arbitrarily chosen attitudes or something.
Arbitrarily chosen. What? Where does Spitzer think that my moral values come from? Does he think that I arbitrarily chose them? I chose my values. So I'm just like, yeah, all right, I'll go that value and that value. No, I am a human, just like Spencer. I acquire my moral standards and values and attitudes in the same way Spencer does, which is through our evolved psychology coming in contact with culture and socialization. And that's how we acquire them. They're not particularly voluntary. I'm not able to choose whether I don't like suffering. I don't like to be in severe pain. I don't like to be extremely uncomfortable. I could not choose otherwise. I do like certain kinds of foods. I could not choose otherwise. I do enjoy certain kinds of activities. I could not choose otherwise. I have been heavily enculturated to have a certain set of values and to view the world a certain way. The fact that I have similar moral values to Spencer, and that Spencer and I don't have similar moral values to, I don't know, like really despicable slave owners in the 1700s, that's not a coincidence. It's a product of us undergoing different experiences. Were any of us, the audience, anybody, under radically different cultural circumstances, chances are you would hold radically different moral standards than you do. And they wouldn't be particularly voluntary. They're certainly not chosen in some sort of culture transcendent or enculturation or education or socialization transcendent way. I'm not just unaffected by the causal vicissitudes of my experiences any more than anybody else is. And so if Spencer is modeling the psychology of the error theorist as them picking and choosing their values as if they were picking and choosing, I don't know, pizza toppings, or picking and choosing something in a frivolous way. Like, you know, they're at a festival and there's 15 different events and they would be happy to see all of them. And they're just like, let's go to this one first. And so they just pick one at random, more or less. That's not how we acquire our values any more than that's how Spencer acquires his values. And that doesn't mean that it's not like the only options for having values is discern what the objective moral truths are or just pick them willy-nilly on a whim. Those aren't the only options. I don't think either of those are how values are acquired. So I just think that Spencer might have a crude, bizarre, and inaccurate, and most importantly, inaccurate caricature of how an error theorist or a moral anti-realist would acquire their moral values. Anselm says, hi, Anselm. Nitty waves and says, really liked your last blog post. Do you mean the one from yesterday, the one on subjectivism? if you haven't already seen it, you should go check it out, everybody. So let's pop over to Substack. Boop, 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 boop. I'm trying to get to it. Oh, that's so weird. Okay. So my latest post is called Subjectivism Makes More Sense of Moral Outrage Than Moral Realism. So you could go check that out. I'll put a link here. And I'll pop over and pin it. So go check that out. So Ian Self asks a good question, which is, why is this on YouTube Shorts? The reason for that is that it's a new feature introduced by StreamYard, which they recommended. So I'm trying it out to see what happens. And it said that you could broadcast your stream both in landscape and portrait mode. So I said, cool, let's do that. And it looks like it created 2 videos when it did that. And maybe one is appearing in shorts. So maybe can you be live in a short? I don't even know how that works. I've never done that before. So it looks like it's doing both at the same time. I do have, like in the UI, I could see both the landscape version and the portrait version. And it looks like I'm too close to the camera for the portrait version. So it's going to look weird. You're going to see like me leaning out of the frame and my face a little too close. But that's the current setup I have. Like I could put the seat back like this, but then I'm really far from the computer and that looks weird. So I would have to mess around with the camera and the positioning in the room to get it to work better for it being in portrait mode. But for now, let's just test it, see how it works. Nitty says it increases engagement. Yeah, well, I mean, I hope so. I hope it increases engagement. Nitty says sometimes YouTube will open you straight to vertical live or shorts, even if you don't want it to. Okay, so maybe it'll increase engagement. Good for me, I guess. All right, let's keep going with the video. Cool.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So kind of taking stock here. There's a case to be made for at least a kind of moral skepticism, but it comes at a pretty severe cost. I think you want to.
Nope, they haven't established that. They haven't shown that there's any cost to being a moral skeptic or a moral anti-realist of any kind.
Say.
At least, and I'm not even entirely sure it is in the end coherent. Maybe it's logically consistent, but there's a sense in which it's not coherent because you have to think of yourself as being committed to your view in some sense.
Yeah.
And what's incoherent about being committed to your views?
And logic itself might be normative. So there's that too. I think.
So there are all sorts of reasons why.
Wait, so what did JPA say?
And logic itself might be normative. So there's that too.
Logic itself might be normative. I don't think it is normative, and I'm on the record saying that. So you could look at my discussion with Richard Brown. I think it's really weird to say logic is normative. What the hell? Logic is a set of tools. You could use them or not use them. I don't even know if it's meaningful to say it's normative. I think it's a very bizarre claim. But if something is normative, it certainly doesn't have to be normative in a realist sense. So I'm a global normative anti-realist. I don't think that there's normative facts in any normative domain. And I think that all normative considerations can be reduced to descriptive facts about relations between means and ends. So, I don't think that they're presenting any problems at all for a position like mine. It looks like they're leveraging other positions that they have to say that you're paying a cost for endorsing position A because it creates problems if you endorse position B, but I don't endorse position B either. So what's the cost for me? And if they want to say, but now you're paying double the cost because you're rejecting A and B, it'd only be a cost if I thought it's paying a cost to reject A or B or the combination of A and B. But since I don't think it's a cost, they would need to present some further argument about why it's a cost. And if it's something like it's counterintuitive to reject the normativity of logic and the normativity of morality, well, I don't find it to be counterintuitive. So how is it a cost? Is it a cost for me to think something that Spencer and JPA happen to find counterintuitive? Okay, well, is it a cost for them to endorse things that I find counterintuitive, or is this a one-way street? Like the whole framing which they're talking about this, I think it's weird and not well expressed here or articulated or defended. I think there's something very strange going on with the way that they're approaching these sorts of questions.
Yeah. So there are all sorts of reasons why I think that the moral skepticism, which is, I think is the best way to resist realism, you're just going to end up with like only someone who is really, really, really motivated to reject objective morality would want to embrace all the consequences of going that route.
Yeah.
So far, I think that they've articulated exactly, and I mean this, 0 undesirable consequences of rejecting moral realism. I'm not super, I mean, I am super committed to being an anti-realist, but it's not in virtue of being super committed to like wanting to reject realism. I just think that Spencer and JPA and everybody else, none of them have ever made a good case for realism. And I mean this, I'll lay all the gauntlets down. I think that there are literally, and I mean this, literally no good arguments for moral realism. Not one good argument for moral realism. All of the arguments rely in some way on, for all of the arguments, there is an anti-realist response that works perfectly well. And typically, the reason why people reject the anti-realist response is because of some intuition they personally have. Well, I don't have those intuitions. So from my point of view, why should I think that there's any strong case for realism? Unless they wanted to show somehow, and we'd have to move it into meta philosophy, that there's something more truth tracking about their intuitions than mine. And so they often do this. They'll appeal to numbers. There's more of us than there are of you. I think there's ways in which we could challenge that. And I have challenged that quite extensively. So I just don't think that they have a good case in the sort of direct dialectic itself. I think realists have basically nothing going for their position. And then if we move into the metaphilosophical domain, I actually think they get trounced even worse over there. So I think there's just nothing going for realism. I think it's one of the least plausible positions in the entirety of academic philosophy. I find it astounding that such a view has persisted and even enjoyed a kind of renaissance in the past 30, 40 years. Really, since like the 90s, non-naturalist realism seems to have taken off. And the reason I think it's taken off is because I think that certain people have managed to, for like social reasons, it's fashionable. I think certain people have obtained positions of influence and success within a relatively insular academic community, but that there's few external checks and balances. And as those people have rose up the ranks, it's elevated the popularity of the view. Those people serve as a kind of magnetic attractor for people with similar sympathies and metaphilosophical dispositions. It draws those people. Those people advocate and write books and write articles. And it gives the impression that you have a super defensible position here, when really what you have is a local parochial trend that is a result of largely sociological forces and not the merit or quality of the arguments for moral realism. So that's what I think. Yeah. So, and I do think that there's broader cultural effects of like there's reasons why realism continues to be persistent and desirable to people. And part of it, I think, is an incidental commitment to a kind of monotheism that has dominated Western thinking for millennia. And even as it's receded from predominantly secular academic institutions, I still think it has a residual effect on the perspectives of people that are discussing these matters. As far as I know, JPA is a theist. I don't know if he said specifically that he's a Christian, but I'm pretty confident that he is. Spencer Case, as far as I know, is an atheist, but I think I saw an article from him saying that he would want to be a theist, or that he has some kind of sympathies for the perspective. I don't know. Maybe Spencer could clarify in the comments. I don't expect any of them to engage with me at this point, which is disappointing because I'd love to talk to them. But I see no interest in talking to me from them. I mean, Spencer will talk to me, but like, not like, okay. On this video, he had left I think a pretty funny comment. He's like, hi, in the comments, but I do find the engagement is less than I would like it to be. Let's put it that way. And as far as I know, JPA has not and will not engage with me, which I find unfortunate because I'd be happy to talk to them. And it looks like Spencer's saying said quite a few things you'll see in part one if you've watched that, or if you do end up watching that. That he says a lot of stuff I kind of agree with. In fact, some stuff I've gone out of my way to defend views, and then Spencer ends up saying something very similar. So I think that there might be some common ground here. And then, at the end of the day, I just like talking to people with very different views. And I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So, and the reason I commented on the theist connection is that Nidhi said, "What the heck is the default connection to theism and realism in the first place? If God as agents, if gods are agents, and assume the first horn of the Euthyphro is false." I don't think that they do. So Christians will pretty aggressively resist Euthyphro dilemma by insisting it's a false dichotomy, and that it's not the case that some things are good because God says so, or uh, uh, that things are good independent of God saying so, but rather that something like God is goodness itself, or God's fundamental or essential nature is good. And so the moral facts are sort of like, I don't know exactly how they'd phrase it, but they are a sort of necessary byproduct of God's nature. And so it's not that God is choosing, they're not like dependent in some contingent way on what God's whims happen to be. And so they're not stance dependent in the conventional anti-realist sense, nor are they good in some way that isn't somehow determinative of or independent of God's nature, or like determined by something other than God's nature. So they are determined by God's nature, but not in a way that's like stance dependent, something like that. I'm sure I'm not getting it exactly right. And from looking at what they've said, I don't know that that's entirely unconvincing or doesn't work. I'm not typically a fan of dichotomies in the first place, but they at least, and let's say that there's problems with their position, the position's wrong. They're still defending a position according to which they reject the Euthyphro dilemma as false dichotomy and argue for some alternative view. So I don't think that they themselves consider themselves typically to be committed to some type of anti-realism. So Sapir says, I think people are often arguably manipulated in saying they have these intuitions. Yeah, I think that they are. And I've talked about this on my blog extensively about the ways in which philosophers in the classroom and outside of the classroom use, whether intentional or not, because I don't know if it's intentional, but they use dialectical strategies that have, at the very least, the byproduct, even if not the intent, of shaming, humiliating, coercing, or browbeating people into either retreating from expressing anti-realist views or pressuring them to endorse realist views. And so I do think that there's a bit of a intellectual arm twisting that inflates the amount of realists. And then this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you scare your opposition into silence and you compel people to express support for a view, even if the silent people really do endorse an alternative view, and even if the fakers, people like expressing endorsement of your side, are faking it, that can give the false sense of consensus, which could then lead to a genuine sense of consensus gets dragged along behind it. So I think that realists are, again, whether intentional or not, exploiting social shaming techniques to elevate the number of realists that there are. And I think it's been effective. And if you do that for a few decades, you can just twist people's arms into being realists and then go, look, there's more of us than you. So yeah, that's evidence that we're right. You can generate, it's basically manufacturing consensus. Well, let's call it. They're manufacturing consensus and then doing a victory dance on the basis of that. It's only marginally better than if someone just like exiled or beat up all the people of the contrary view and then said, look, everybody has my view. So my view clearly is the winner here. So it's really unfortunate that they do that. So if there were a rhetorically level playing field, I don't think realists would be doing very well. In fact, I think they get their asses handed to them pretty soundly. I think a lot of people would see the conceptual vacuity and the explanatory superfluousness and the deliberative superfluousness and the basically all of that. I think moral realism is practically superfluous. It doesn't do anything. And so I think that would be exposed pretty readily and that people would abandon the position. I don't think it's some default feature of the way that people are disposed to speak or think or talk or anything like that. And I don't think realists have ever shown that it is. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, you got to bite bullets, and your teeth will be imperiled, given all the bullets that must be bitten.
Yeah, I have a blog post on this where I talk about people will just say this position or that position is biting the bullet, and people just seem to go along with this, and you should resist it. Being an anti-realist is not biting any bullets at all. It's not. If you imagine an atmosphere in which Christianity were the dominant position among academic philosophers, like 90% of them were, you could just hear in your mind all the philosophers saying, well, if you could be an atheist, but you're biting a lot of bullets if you do go that route. And just swap it out for something else. Most people believe in Bigfoot. Well, you could reject the existence of Bigfoot, but you're biting a lot of bullets. This bullet biting thing is a social power kind of thing. It's a dominance kind of thing. It's not really a question of which position is sort of in a theoretically neutral way on worse footing or not. There is no theoretically neutral perspective from which to adjudicate which position is biting bullets more or less than another. So things are only biting bullets relative to a perspective that privileges the realist view. And since I reject that perspective, then I reject that there's anything about my position that bites bullets. By the way, I've never heard a good objection to me raising this kind of point, that this kind of bullet biting stuff, I think it's largely rhetorical, it's largely vacuous, it's largely presumptuous. Never heard a good retort to it. So if JPA or Spencer have a rebuttal to what I've just said there, or if they want to have a look at my article on bullet biting and have a rebuttal to that, I'm welcome to entertain it. They're welcome to come on the channel and tell me why I'm wrong if they think I'm wrong. Or anybody watching this, tell me why I'm wrong about that. I can go check out my article. If someone reminds me or they're disposed to do so, I'm happy to link my article on why I have an issue with this accusation of biting bullets. I'm happy to link it in a comment response to your comment. So, so this is all just a way of saying I'm open to the challenge that I'm mistaken on these things, and unfortunately, I'm a little frustrated because I'm not getting the level of engagement on these things as I would like. Yeah, I mean, Sapir says, I agree. There's sort of a rhetorical monopoly for realist views, and that's unfortunate. And that's part of what I'm trying to push back against. I think if you push back against the rhetoric, it will expose the weakness of the arguments for what they are.
Okay, and so yeah, and then the queerness argument, I think we're in agreement there. I was going to keep a little bit more scorn on that. So reality itself is just weird, right? So singling out morality, it does seem very arbitrary, especially in the light of contemporary physics. I mean, go read what the physicists are saying just about physical reality, which we're supposed to think is, like straight up reality, straightforward reality. Well, quantum mechanics tells us that physical reality itself is extremely strange.
This is, I'm sorry, but this is a caricature of what Mackey's saying. So Mackey's argument where he says that the moral facts, if they were real, would be metaphysically so weird that they would be utterly unlike anything else. He's not just saying they're weird in the sense in which things are weird. Like a duckbill platypus is weird. He doesn't mean weird in that sense. He means weird roughly in the sense, because really the error theory is targeting largely a non-naturalist conception of morality. Maybe it could target naturalist ones, provided that they have a weird metaphysics. I don't know what that would look like, but I understand. Maybe I'm wrong, but I understood it to be largely going after non-naturalist views. Now, you might think something like this: from a naturalist perspective, if there were moral facts of the kind that Mackey is targeting, if they don't fit in with that naturalistic framework, then they are metaphysically of a kind that seems inconsistent with one's existing metaphysical commitments, and so they should be rejected on those grounds. Now, if you take that to be a weak argument because you reject naturalism, fair enough. And you could reconstrue this if you don't like the natural, non-natural distinction. You could just say conditional on Mackey's metaphysical views. There's going to be views about what sorts of things he's willing to fit within his metaphysical framework of what he considers acceptable, an acceptable ontology versus things that he would reject from it. That he would say, yeah, these things don't really square with it. It would be the same way you might not accept ghosts or intercessory prayer or qualia or whatever, conditional on you holding up a particular perspective. But the rejection is based on those things failing to meet the criteria that one would use for establishing the existence of the things within the domain of one's metaphysical framework. So if, for instance, you're an empiricist and the things in question being posited are like unavailable to empirical inquiry, but they exhibit properties, certain kinds of properties where you would expect them to be, or maybe not if you expect them to be. Well, let's say you're a physicalist. This is a simple way to put it. If you're a physicalist and someone says there are these things, they exist and they're not physical, then you're going to reject them on the grounds that you think everything that exists is physical. And in the same way, if you have a metaphysical position according to which the moral facts wouldn't fit with the metaphysical framework, you're going to reject them on those grounds, on like reflective equilibrium grounds, that you have a view like all things which exist exhibit these characteristics and don't exhibit these other characteristics. You're proposing to me a thing that doesn't fit within that. It doesn't exhibit these characteristics or does have those other characteristics. Therefore, I think it doesn't exist. That is the kind of move that so that's the kind of move Mackey's making. And if you don't agree with his metaphysical presuppositions, of course you're going to think, yeah, there's nothing particularly strange about including this in there. But that's because you have a different framework in which it's not strange relative to that framework. Now, what he's not doing is saying if something's existence would be weird in the conventional sense, then you shouldn't believe in it. And so I really doubt Mackey did or would have any issue with quantum mechanics merely on the grounds that its implications are strange or weird. That's not really what he means when he characterizes the kind of realism he's rejecting. And yet it's depicted in this way. And it's a bit of a caricature. And JPA shouldn't be making this kind of characterization of the view.
And then also I think that, yeah, the Quirinus type argument is parasitic on an implausible assumption, which is that there's like this really knockdown strong case for physicalism or materialism. And
yeah, so I agree with him about this. That's where I agree with JPA. That's where I think the argument should be founded. So if Mackey's argument is something like conditional on physicalism, the existence of non-physical moral properties is highly implausible. Fine, that's like trivially true. And then JPA or somebody else could just come along and say, yeah, but we don't accept physicalism, so we're not going to accept that position. That's fair. JPA, just go with that. Don't imply that. In fact, let me just make sure I got the implication right, because I sometimes make mistakes here. Let's take it back a bit.
It does seem very arbitrary, especially in the light of contemporary physics. And you go read, so reality itself is just weird, right? So, singling out morality, it does seem very arbitrary, especially in the light of contemporary physics. And you go read what the physicists are saying just about physical reality, which we're supposed to think is,
right. Yeah, I think he is making this mistake here. So it's not like a physicalist looks at the implications of a particular physicalist account, like a Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, and says, so there's some sort of indeterminacy in the way that like quantum events occur. That's weird, and therefore that position's wrong. That's not what Mackey is doing with respect to moral facts. He's not saying the implications are like surprising or strange in the conventional sense. He's saying that they're strange in the sense of being like, he doesn't even need to say they're strange or weird. He could just say, the moral properties I reject are inconsistent with my presuppositions about the fundamental nature of reality. And unless and until one could offer an alternative ontology that I accept, according to which they would be consistent with it, I'm not going to accept them. And that would be fine. But yeah, is it presupposing a particular metaphysical framework according to which the positions in question don't square with it? Yes. So it's a perfectly legitimate way to attack the position to say, I don't share those presuppositions. But it's nothing to do with conventional means of weirdness. Nothing at all.
Like straight up reality, straightforward reality. Well, quantum mechanics tells us that physical reality itself is extremely strange. And then also I think that, yeah, the queer on an implausible assumption, which is that there's like this really knockdown strong case for physicalism or materialism, and there's a whole host of problems totally unrelated to morality for that kind of world picture. So okay, on another skeptical.
Just briefly on evolutionary debunking.
Well, that's where I was going next, right? So,
go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I was going to say, yeah, there's a kind of separate line of attack that comes by from evolutionary type considerations, made most famous by Sharon Street, but I'll let you explain what the evolutionary debunking argument is and what you would want to say in response to that.
I don't actually think evolution is doing all that much heavy lifting in this argument.
Yeah, I entirely agree with Spencer about this. I think evolution is a bit of a red herring here. I do really love Sharon Street's original paper on this. I really like her paper on ideally coherent eccentrics. It's a fantastic paper. It's a response to Parfit's agony argument, or sorry, you could say the Future Tuesday argument, if you know. So it's a response to that. Sharon Street does fantastic work. She's an excellent writer, and I should pause a moment to say thanks to everybody for recommendations for who to have on the channel and what kinds of things to do. I've been trying behind the scenes to also coordinate hosting a debate between other people. I've never hosted a debate before, so that could become a new type of content on the channel. If you know of people that want to do a debate and they're not like, tinfoil hat weirdos, like living in the wilderness to avoid the aliens or something. If it's like serious people, I'd be happy to host a debate or a discussion. I'd like to do call-ins and stuff on the channel too. Now wouldn't be a good time, so maybe more in the afternoon or something. I really need more stability and consistency, but that's only going to happen in a few months or a year from now, as less predictable baby duties recede and it becomes more of a routine. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, right. So thanks everybody for all the recommendations. And one of the recommendations is Sharon Street. I did see Sharon Street last year. She gave a talk, and it was cool. It was interesting. It was not what I expected, but it was interesting. But she has fantastic work on this stuff, and she'd be fantastic to have on the channel. I endorse something like evolutionary debunking arguments, but they're not predicated on like biological evolution. So I endorse a kind of cultural debunking argument. But that's a discussion for another time. Supir, can you elaborate? Okay, but did these guys accept your view that they're doing something similar with the metaphilosophical assumptions they take for granted? I don't know. I don't know what they think.
I think people like to say it because it sounds scientific, evolutionary debunking, but basically the basic kind of argument that it is does not. You could make a similar argument just talking about like cultural contingency.
Yeah, and Marx, I think.
100% agree. I think people do favor it because it sounds more sciencey. That's not to say Sharon Street does, but at least I think a lot of people, if they could glom onto something that sounds more scientifically credible, they'll do so. I mean, you always have atheists saying, you get morality from evolution. Do you? I mean, of course, evolution has played a significant role in shaping human psychology, but culture is doing a lot of the work. And I think you have a pretty naive approach to human psychology. If you construe it, you don't want to be some, goofy person that thinks that human mind is a complete blank slate and anybody can think or be any particular way. That we're just this empty hard drive and you can just stick whatever you want in there. That's a goofy view of human psychology, but it's also a goofy view of human psychology to think that we're not these like culture sponges engineered to pick up and do things in a cultural, through cultural transmission, which we are. Their pre-programming is largely for enculturation. That isn't to say that there aren't other things that are more, you could say, genetically ossified, things like taste preferences. You're not going to get a whole lot of people that are just going to think, certain kinds of food are disgusting. And that you're not going to get people that would think like chocolate and bacon and steak and cheese and what are some other things that most people are going to like. I don't know, like savory kinds of things, umami type of things, sweet kinds of things. You're not going to get populations easily where they hate every kind of possible fruit you could imagine. That's really like just strawberries are the worst thing ever. Not very likely, but they love something gooey and smelly and gross. Culture can shape food preferences. So it looks like durian, preference for durian probably has a significant cultural component. Preference for alcoholic drinks has a cultural component. Caviar, certain sorts of luxury goods. So culture certainly does have a role, but it can't like totally override and dominate pre-existing preferences that people are disposed to have. So it's really the interplay of genes and environment and part of environment is culture. Part of environment is other genes that shapes people's preferences, attitudes, dispositions, philosophical positions, all of it.
It did exactly that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. But like, look.
Sorry, I kind of cut them off midway, so let me start over.
Evolutionary debunking, but basically the basic kind of argument that it is does not. You could make a similar argument just talking about like cultural contingency.
Yeah, and Marx, I think, did exactly that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. But like, you can take, basically the idea is, look, if you see that your beliefs have come about by a non-truth tracking process, you should reduce your confidence in those beliefs, or maybe suspend judgment about them or change them. It should affect your stance toward your beliefs, right? So, if you found out that you had been brainwashed to believe something that you believe, you might now, in discovering this, no longer be so confident about that, because you saw your belief came through a process that was not truth tracking. So the thought would then be that, look, the evolutionary version of this argument says, well, look, you can fully explain. Actually, Matt puts this in terms of explanation. I do think this is an improvement on Sharon Street's argument. So Matt's like, you can fully explain all of your moral reactions by evolution plus culture plus everything else. Had you been raised in a radically different culture, or evolved under radically different circumstances, you would not think, you would not have those same sorts of moral reactions. So that is, in a gist, that's the skeptical argument in a nutshell. One really quick way to push back against this, or to at least flag it as like, oh yeah, this seems like not decisive, is nobody seems to think that this is a good debunking argument for like practical reasons.
Right. Practical
Like,
reasons, epistemic reasons. Yeah.
yeah. So you might remember that when Matt and I gave a presentation on this for the Nathan Bray, Steve Kirshner sort of book discussion group, I had a back and forth with Nathan Kaufness about this. And I wanted to say, like, look, like, do you have a reason? Will you accept that you've got a reason, like, not to put your hand on a burning stove? Like, couldn't you explain why you would think you have a reason not to put your hand on a burning stove through evolution, from evolutionary reasons? Like, well, yeah, like, if animals put their hands on burning things that are burning that will harm them, then they can't produce as many young, and yeah, you can just, the story here. And yet that doesn't make you question, or like, I'm guessing it's not going to make you question whether you actually have a reason not to harm yourself in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's true that evolution pushes us in the direction to thinking that randomly harming yourself is bad, finding out that evolution has pushed you in that direction shouldn't make you think, oh, well, I just don't know whether it's actually bad for me to like stab myself in the eye with this pencil or something. Like, no.
Yeah. So something funny is going on here. I mean, whether it's actually bad. Well, in all these cases, you could say that the outcome of those events is overdetermined by whatever reasons we ostensibly have that are independent of our desires and our desires. So in all of these, like touching a hot stove or harming myself in some way, the reason I wouldn't do those things is because I don't want to do those things, because it would be inconsistent with my desires. So then when it comes to the moral considerations, well, are there moral considerations that give me reasons other than my acting in accord with my desires? I think no. So if someone were disposed to have beliefs about what's morally right or wrong that aren't reducible to their desires, then they might think that there's a problem there, because in that case, it can't then be explained by appealing to the desires. Whereas in the case of practical considerations, they could be. There might be some tricky business with the epistemic stuff, but on this view, I actually think epistemic considerations are subordinate to our desires too. In fact, I think everything is, which is, why I'm a pragmatist. Now, that can lead people to misconstrue what a pragmatist is committed to. I don't think that if it would just benefit you, then you should just reason in whatever way, willy-nilly, in some parochial way, because, for instance, believing I'm the coolest person in the world might make me feel good, but it's going to run into the problem of other people don't think that. And so pragmatists tend to favor, not tend to, I mean, it's really part of the position, a much more holistic conception of what's true and how one goes about judging what's true, such that while your perspective and your values play a role they play a role through interacting with the feedback you receive from the world. And I'm not in charge of that feedback. So, pragmatists are going to be a kind of empiricist, and the world isn't going to just give you whatever you want. And so actually getting things right matters. These pragmatists don't have this completely arbitrary sense of what's true or false. Anyway, that's again a discussion for another time.
I know that's bad for me. I suppose the thoroughgoing error theorist, and this is what Kaufman was gesturing in this direction. His response to me is to say, it is just to be a skeptic about those oughts too, and to say, yeah, I don't actually know whether it's good or bad for me to stab myself in the eye with his pencil.
Yeah, so we have to unpack what's meant by it being good or bad. Good or bad, do you mean consistent or inconsistent with promoting my goals and desires? Because then it's very easy to answer that sort of question. It would not be conducive to my goals or desires to harm myself. So that's why I wouldn't do it. It would have nothing to do with it being good or bad, independent of those desires.
All I know is that evolution makes me dislike it. Okay, but I do not feel the slightest, I don't know, force of wanting to say that. Like, it just seems so obvious to me that we have reasons not to hurt ourselves. That.
Okay, but what does Spencer think those reasons are? What are the reasons? Because I can give reasons for why I don't want to why I shouldn't hurt myself, like reasons for why I shouldn't. But that language is just a messy way, at least in philosophical context. I think in ordinary contexts, I don't actually think people are confused about this. But once they get into philosophy, they think that there are reasons, and that the reasons, according to those reasons, you should or shouldn't. And this allows people to imagine that you have reasons for what you should or shouldn't do that are independent of your desires. But me, I just reduce the talk to what is or isn't consistent with promoting my desires. And then it's very easy to account for, self-harm of, I don't want to do that. So that, it wouldn't be good for me relative to my goals in life. That's not what I want. Someone can have really weird preferences. And in that case, or really preferences I would consider unfortunate. And it being very sad. I wouldn't want them to act on those preferences because I don't want that outcome. But I don't think that the preferences themselves can be like mistaken. I just don't think that's how preferences work, because they take preferences to be descriptive facts about agents, like favorite colors and hair color and stuff like that. So I think if we unpack the language here of what a skeptic is saying, the skeptic isn't saying anything particularly wild. It's not like if a skeptic says we don't have reasons to put our hand on a hot stove, that they're saying that they themselves are indifferent to touching hot stoves, that they're not motivated to avoid hot stoves. They're not saying any of that. All they're saying, or all they could be saying, that's at least what I'm saying, is that facts don't give us reasons independent of our desires. There are facts about what the world is like. There are facts about conditional facts, like, okay, so here would be some facts. Let's say there's a fire on the other side of the room. Okay, here are some facts. There's a fire on the other side of the room. I'm standing on this side of the room. If I stepped in the fire, this is a conditional or hypothetical fact. If I stepped into the fire, I would burn myself and die. Now, then there's another fact about me. I don't want to do that. And so we've got all the descriptive facts to make sense of me going, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And if I said I shouldn't do that, what would I mean? I mean, I don't want to set myself on fire and die. I don't want to do that. So it's very easy to make sense of this in purely descriptive terms without ever invoking a notion of reasons independent of desires. So what's weird about the way you'll see, I don't know if Spencer says it exactly this way, but Parfit certainly does, and a lot of non-nationalist realists do, is that they think that on their view, the facts themselves, there are object-given reasons. So like facts like the fire would burn you, the fact that the fire would burn you, or the fact that the fire would kill you, that gives you a reason to not step into the fire, independent of whether you want to be on fire or want to die. It gives you a reason. What the fuck does that mean? What do you mean it gives you a reason? How does it give you a reason? Look, if I went up to somebody and they said, hey, would you like a cup? Yes, I'd like a cup. And so here's a person handing me a cup. They hand me the cup and I go, thank you. This is a person giving me a cup. How the fuck does a fact give you a reason? What does that mean? So when I look at the scenario, what I would say is people don't want to be on fire and die. So that's why they don't do it. And there was there was wasn't there like a Buddhist person that set themselves on fire for some protest or something? Yeah, I don't like talking about this topic. So let's talk about something else, like somebody doing something weird. I don't want to talk about self-harm and that sort of stuff. It's an awkward topic. It's not something that I'm comfortable really talking about. Oh, what is this? Super sticker. What is a super sticker? What is that? It looks like something. Is somebody giving me something? If so, then thanks. Awesome. I don't know what that is. Okay. Anyway, if someone could explain in the chat, please do. Okay, I'll have a look at the chat. Miss Java Wolf says, wasn't the start of this evolutionary debunking? Not harming myself is consistent with evolution. Yeah, that's true too, up to a point. But keep in mind, some animals, there may be selective advantages to them allowing themselves to be harmed in certain sorts of situations. So animals sacrificing themselves for the rest of the animals. Yeah, ants might do stuff like that. Like bees, if they sting you, there's a good chance that they'll die. But there could be selective advantages to them sacrificing themselves for the sake of the hive, that sort of thing. So there are cases where that sort of thing it can occur from an evolutionary perspective. A tip for my video. Oh, awesome. Okay. Thanks so much. Cool. From Silly Naminis from Warlight. Okay, thanks so much. And if you wanted to leave a comment or something, I'm happy to pin that up here. As long as it's not something super insane or something. If you wanted to leave a comment and have me address it, I'm happy to do that. Cool. Thanks so much. Nice. Okay. I'm not going to say no to that. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Sorry, I wasn't quite. I've seen the sticker. I didn't know what it was. I'm guessing it's like TikTok, right? Where would people like send those little sparkly things and things that float around in your screen, like you get money. That's cool. All right. Thanks so much. I really, really, really appreciate that. That's very cool. Okay, so what was I saying about all this? Right. So this talk of reasons, I think the talk of reasons and shoulds allows one conceptually to divorce them from desires, and then one can think that facts can give reasons, and I don't think that makes any sense. I think it literally doesn't make sense. I don't think it's false. I think it's nonsensical. Oh, right. So, hey, Harmonic Luke says, maybe I have reasons to adopt instrumental goals that would best achieve my terminal ones. Incidentally, I'm working on a blog post now where Parfit talks about this in the beginning of On What Matters. And I'm responding to part of what Parfit says. Parfit has a critique of instrumental desires giving reasons. And it's a funny case because I agree with Parfit that instrumental desires or goals don't give us reasons. But that's because I think nothing gives us reasons. But he has this very weird scenario with apples that's supposed to show this. And it's really contrived and it's bizarre. And I am so unimpressed with Parfit. All right, let me take this back a bit because I'm losing track of what we were talking about.
I don't know, is that evolution makes me dislike it. Okay, but I do not feel the slightest, I don't know, force of wanting to say that. Like, it just seems so obvious to me that we have reasons not to hurt ourselves. That if your skeptical argument is pushing you in that kind of a direction, then it seems like it's not an argument you want.
Yeah, so I would just want to hear from Spencer what he means. Like what reasons do you have to not do these things other than if we reduce the reasons to you not wanting to do them? What would be the explanation?
So one popular response to the street style that, any kind of debunking argument, I suppose, is that evolution gave us the faculty of reason, and reason's kind of a bundle deal. It's a bundle package. And, so like the kind of rational capacities that would have been evolution, would have conduced to evolutionarily adaptive behaviors came bundled up with the ability to do calculus and formal logic and stuff that wouldn't have helped anyone survive on the African savannah, and also gave us the ability to reason about morality and to access moral truths by way of reason. So how do you feel about that as a response?
Well, I think that's true, but I don't know that saying that alone is a good enough response, because you also have to say why evolution gave us this faculty of moral reasoning is the best explanation, right? Like, so there's still some work to be done there. The reductio I've given, I think, shows there's got to be something wrong with it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's given a reductio.
But why it's not the best explanation, why evolution alone isn't the best explanation, I guess more needs to be said about that.
Okay.
But I do think that is a good part of the answer.
Yeah. I actually agree that it's not going to be the complete answer, but maybe for a different reason than you do, but I'll come to that. Another thought on this to throw out there, I'm curious what you would say about this. So it seemed to me, in thinking about this, as I did somewhat carefully, because I talked about this in a chapter in my dissertation, that the evolutionary debunking style arguments are less compelling the more they're less compelling the more difficult you think it is to be morally good. So what I mean by this is that, if you kind of have a humdrum conception of morality, where morality is just, like you're being a morally good person, provided that you're not lying frivolously and murdering people and, like torturing puppies for fun and stuff. But like, as long as you're not doing those things, then like you're pretty much okay. But if you think instead morality demands a lot of this, it's quite demanding. As I think it probably is, actually. I think we probably have duties of beneficence that far exceed common sense morality. Then if you think that's what the moral truth is, then evolution seems to account for that much more poorly, right? So like it doesn't seem at all plausible that there would be a good adaptive explanation of why I think that I have reasons to just like generally reduce suffering, for example, among all sentient creatures.
Yeah, or like another problem. This is a huge problem for this that doesn't get.
Yeah, so I think JPA is onto something in the sense that I don't think that those kind of moral standards are like a direct byproduct of or direct adaptive feature of evolution. I don't think biological evolution like directly, like it's not like encoded in our genes that people are concerned with non-human animals or impartially concerned with the beneficence of humankind or concerned with the distant future or whatever. I mean, maybe on genetic grounds, they might be concerned with the distant future. But people would be concerned with people in the past, that there would be no adaptive advantage to rescue those people. If they had a time machine, they might go do it. Why? Like, how does evolution explain this? Well, I don't think it does so in a direct way. I think that evolution sets the stage, biological evolution sets the stage for cultural evolution. And it's actually culture that accounts for whether we care about these sorts of things or not. I mean, keep in mind, many people in cultures, especially in the past, were ruthless, brutal, much harsher than people today. They didn't care about outgroups that much. They considered them all garbage. So people did have attitudes like this. So human moral standards can vary quite a bit. And I think it's the product of culture. So yeah, evolution isn't going to do a good direct job of explaining that. Evolution explains why we have culture, and then culture explains why we think these ways.
Raised. If evolution it has its fingerprints all over our moral intuitions, why don't people think, like intuitively think, deciding not to have kids is like one of the worst things you can do?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so this is something. Mike Humer said something about evolution too, and I think that I very sorry, Spencer and JP. I think it's a naive understanding of the way that natural selection is going to shape the psychology of organisms. So this is something I've sometimes asked students when I bring up evolution. Is I ask them, why do giraffes eat? Why do they eat? Why do they drink water? And students will say, to survive. Okay. Now, it's true that they eat to survive, but is what's going through the giraffe's mind, hey, I've got to survive, therefore I'm going to eat? No. And it's the same reason why animals have sex. Animals don't have sex in order to reproduce from a motivational point of view. Rather, they reproduce because they like. It's not that natural selection sets an adaptive goal directly, and then you're motivated to comply with the goal. Rather, natural selection shapes a desire to perform an action that incidentally leads to a selectively advantageous outcome. Animals eat food because they're hungry, not because they're trying to survive. Animals have sex because they are compelled by whatever biological factors, whether it's a desire for pleasure, if they're thoughtful enough to think that way, or whatever hormonal cascades are going through their systems, is compelling them to mate or to fertilize eggs or whatever it is that they do. The natural selection, there isn't any expectation or prediction or belief among evolutionary biologists that it has to directly select for agents intending to act in accord with maximizing their like reproductive fitness. So, humans have a bias, and this is common for other animals, like a bias towards kin. So people care more about their cousins than strangers. They care more about their siblings than they do about cousins, and so on and so forth. And this is generally true of other animals. Now, is it that the animal is like doing a calculation? They're my cousin, so they share, whatever 1/8 of my DNA or an average or whatever the number is. Is it 1/8 or 1/16? I don't know, something like that. So, and then they're doing all these calculations and then acting, that will enhance the number of genes. That's not what they're doing. There's going to be like pheromones, or they grew up in the same environment, or whatever it is that's causing them to identify them as kin is going to cause them to feel a certain way or act a certain way towards kin over non-kin in a preferential way. So in the same way, if we take it back, have a look at
why not? Another problem, this is a huge, huge problem for this that doesn't get raised. If evolution has its fingerprints all over our moral intuitions, why don't people think, like intuitively think, deciding not to have kids is like one of the worst things you can do?
Yeah.
Okay, so evolution doesn't shape our moral standards to directly motivate us to enhance our own reproductive fitness. It's going to shape attitudes about sex that are conducive to enhancing reproductive fitness. And you could arguably, that is in fact what people favor. So if you look at what, you could take a lot of what evolutionary psychologists say with some grains of salt in certain circumstances. But if you look at, for instance, when they look at sex differences in preferences, like males being more inclined towards promiscuity and females being more inclined towards securing resources or something like that. Now, if you look at what animals do, humans and non-humans alike, the motivations are going to be strategies that optimize for the reproductive fitness. If you can have a lot of offspring, it makes sense to favor promiscuity. And so you would expect males to try to be promiscuous. And if you can't do so as much, you might have a relatively lower amount of an inclination towards promiscuity. Now, humans are weird and complicated, and so culture can really alter quite a lot of the way in which human social relations and sexual relations develop and are maintained within social groups. But you could see this sort of thing in animals. So, and again, I'm not endorsing necessarily any particular framework, but the point just is that the psychology that's motivating organisms is motivating them to make certain, they're not engineered from a genetic perspective to be directly motivated to optimize for reproductive fitness. They're motivated to be like, have this amount of sex, or have sex with this particular organism or whatever. And then the product of that, the byproduct of that is the offspring that you produce, but they're not directly like, how can I maximize reproductive fitness? And so it's the same thing for humans. There's no particularly good evolutionary reason why we would expect humans to directly moralize having offspring. Instead, people are going to have all these moral attitudes around sex. And then the outcome of that is that that's supposed to enhance reproductive fitness. Now, because humans are weird, we can end up creating anomalous cultural attitudes and dispositions that are inconsistent with what one would expect of our evolutionary history. Now, take for instance, the use of birth control. And you could say, oh, it seems to be at odds with evolution. Well, Evolution motivated people to have sex. It makes people horny, as Sapir puts it in the comments here. That's the mechanism through which it achieved people having offspring, by making them want to have sex. It didn't do it by making them want to have children. So in the same way we eat not to survive, but because we're hungry, people have sex because they're horny, not because they want to have babies. Now, of course, people sometimes want to have babies and then have sex in order to have babies. But people typically have sex in order to have sex, and then the babies come along as a result. So this idea that we would like hypermoralize having children in a direct way, I think reveals a naive understanding of the way human evolution works and the way that the evolution of organisms in general works. It's just, that's not how organisms are motivated. And this is true for food, for sex, for all sorts of things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, that would be damn handy from the perspective of evolution and getting us to reproduce.
Yeah. And then the other thing was, so I mentioned birth control. So birth control steps into the picture as a relatively recent and anomalous technology available to people. Now, think about the long-term consequences of what happens when there is genetic variation in the degree to which a person is disposed to use birth control or not use birth control. Who is going to end up having more children? People that don't use birth control or people that do? It's going to be people that don't. And so from a selective perspective, natural selection is self-correcting. If it led to a kind of adaptive cul-de-sac where the mechanisms through which the organisms were led to have enhanced reproductive fitness relative to their conspecifics, is one in which a subset of those organisms were motivated to prevent themselves from having offspring, they're not going to leave behind as many offspring as organisms that aren't inclined to do that. And so they will leave future gene pools at higher and higher rates until, so in the case of humans, once humans have the technology available to not have children, people that don't want to have children will not have children or not have as many children. And then the ones that have more children will leave behind more children who are genetically predisposed, insofar as the genetics plays a role in this, to want to have children. And so then that will happen for humans eventually. I rarely talk about evolution that much, but Spencer's characterization of this motivation is one that would inevitably emerge in context in which there would be a selective advantage to directly wanting to have children. And that is exactly what I would predict for humans, say, 2,000 years from now. I think we're seeing it in real time right now. So I don't think he's identified a problem here.
And I am, in fact, a pro-natalist, but you have to argue for the position because people don't find it intuitive.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like we're being micromanaged by evolution.
Spencer's right. We're not being micromanaged by evolution. Evolution for humans did something rather interesting. What it did is it put us through an extremely long developmental period during which much of what's adaptive for us is adaptive to our local environments. Humans fell into the cumulative cultural evolutionary niche. So what is our comparative advantage to other organisms? Well, take away our technology and our knowledge of our local environment, and humans are relatively weak. They're relatively ineffective. We don't have great senses for the most part. Just about the only thing humans have is they're a good like endurance organism, so we could like run for a long time in those environments, like not in a modern sedentary environment, but in societies where people do like an hunting where they will just chase an animal until it collapses from exhaustion. Humans can run ridiculously long times compared to a lot of other animals. So we have that going for us. Other than that, from a physical perspective, humans are not impressive. A chimpanzee would absolutely kick our ass, like easily, no contest. And a lot of other animals would too, especially if we imagine you have no weapons, right? So how did humans evolve? Well, what humans evolved to do is to go through this very long period of extended child development in which we are primed to pick up on the culture around us. Now, why did we do this? Well, humans were, the idea, this is like Richardson, Boyd, gene culture coevolution stuff. We went through periods of ice ages, and then the ice age would retreat, and then it come back like interglacial periods and stuff. So humans ended up having to adapt to a wide range of environments. And because of the comparative advantages that we had in utilizing technology to extract resources from the environment, we continued to lean into that. Well, the local ecological knowledge and the technology and tools needed to extract resources from particular environments varies from one environment to another. The kind of knowledge you would need to survive in the outback in Australia is radically different from the kind of knowledge you would need to survive up in the Arctic Circle. So, like the populations that live in these societies are extremely knowledgeable about how to hunt, what to hunt, where to hunt, when to hunt, what you can eat, what you can't eat, where to go, what to build, how to build it. Clothing to keep you warm requires a different sort of and how to avoid like snow glare. You don't need that technology as much or at all in the outback. Conversely, knowing how to extract resources from the outback requires local ecological knowledge. And how is that knowledge acquired? You're not born with it. You acquire it from your culture. And so humans adapted to picking up information from their culture. And it's information about what kind of tools to build, how to extract resources from your environment, and also social norms, social structures and institutions within those societies. And as a byproduct of leaning so heavily on culture and environment, humans ended up doing a lot of weird stuff. They develop rituals, they have their own unique languages, cultures, rituals, religions, routines, beliefs, attitudes. Not all of them are going to be directly adaptive. Some of them are going to be maladaptive. Think about subcultural communities that take vows of celibacy. They completely opt themselves out of the gene pool, unless they like take a vow of celibacy when they're like 60 or something. But there are communities that have gone extinct because the members don't have sex or they don't reproduce. And so human psychology is, from an evolutionary perspective, we evolved to be structured in such a way that because we're primed to basically download cultures, we can download cultures that cause us to have maladaptive behavior. You can download a culture that says don't have children and that to favor antinatalism. You could download a culture that prompts you to do things that would lead you to not have as much reproductive fitness for whatever reason. And what's going to happen? The people that are predisposed to exhibit those behaviors don't leave behind as many offspring. But that doesn't mean that it's maladaptive to have the ability to adapt based on your cultural flexibility to different environments. And so the general ability to acquire information through cultural transmission, that itself is not necessarily going to go away. It's going to be refined with time. So it may be like bumpers in a bowling alley on there being ways in which culture can shape us, and there probably already are. You probably aren't going to get too many it's not going to be that easy to convince people to like all castrate themselves or to all go jump in a volcano. That doesn't mean humans don't sometimes convince people to do stuff like this. They do. And then they leave the gene pool. So there probably are biological guardrails on what cultural transmission is capable of readily inducing in people. Probably already exist. But that's still under some circumstances going to allow for people to deviate and end up doing maladaptive things. So, humans exhibit this strange behavior that seems at odds with a, micromanaged from a biological perspective, because we're not micromanaged from a biological perspective. We are an unusual organism that's not biologically micromanaged. That's kind of our claim to fame as an organism. So in a sense, Spencer and JPA are pointing to things that are true about humans. We are very different from other organisms in that respect. We are the only organisms that rely in the way that we do on extensive cumulative cultural evolution to adapt to our environments. In that sense, we really are unique, but it's a mistake to think that if something isn't a direct micromanaged product of biological evolution, that we necessarily have some sort of transcendent capacities that are like tracking truths about the world or something like that. They could just be a product of whatever cultures that we grew up in. And in that sense, I wouldn't say that they're arbitrary, but when you look at, they could be contingent. We're not picking up on necessarily some sort of necessary universal truths when we end up forming this or that belief about what's morally right or wrong. We're picking up on contingent cultural adaptations that are local and parochial. And I shouldn't even say adaptations, cultural information or beliefs or attitudes or dispositions or characteristics that may or may not be advantageous from a reproductive fitness perspective, and also may or may not be true.
Yeah, what it looks like is exactly something like the story that you said earlier, which is like certain sort of fellow feeling that gets us in the direction of being able to think philosophically about moral issues. But at that point, evolution is no longer giving us any specific direction. And we know that it isn't because we have all this disagreement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So evolution doesn't give us specific direction on that score. Evolution doesn't direct us with what language we develop. It doesn't direct us with what writing systems we develop. It doesn't direct us with whether we're capitalists or communists. It doesn't direct us with what religion we adopt. All of this should be obvious to people.
And at that point, we're in the level of we have to give each other arguments. And so.
Yeah, seems right. Okay. Are there other arguments against moral realism that keep you up at night? Or does that kind of exhaust the territory?
Almost. There is one that I am a little bit worried about, which is that if morality is totally independent of all human social construction and desires and all of that, if it really is objective in the way that we think physics is objective, then it could turn out to be unfathomably weird. Like the way physics has indeed turned out to be unfathomably weird with quantum mechanics. It could turn in principle, it could turn out that there is like a moral truth that is just like unbelievably bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it would take us 1,000,000 years of cultural progress before we could even see that. I don't know. And you might think that there's something deeply unsettling about the idea that there could be very, very deeply hidden moral duties that apply to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
So I think that's an under discussed issue.
It is. Yeah, but I agree.
Here's what's funny. I've been raising this objection on Facebook and Substack. Like, what if the moral facts are super weird? Would you still comply with them? And Spencer is saying, yeah, he thinks this is a serious concern. I don't know if it keeps him up at night, but I think it should be a serious concern for realists. And now JPA seems to be going, yeah. Why is JPA seemingly so contemptuous, dismissive, and unwilling to engage with me when many of the same things, when they come out of Spencer's mouth, are treated with respect and taken seriously? What the hell, JPA? What did I do that you, it's a big problem for me to say it, but when Spencer says it, it's totally fine. For real, what is the issue? What is the issue, JPA? What is your issue with me? I really don't get it. Yeah. And Anselm says, yeah, a moral truth like you should donate all your money to shrimp welfare. Maybe you should. I don't know why people mock that as like an obviously silly outcome. I actually don't think there's anything obviously silly about that. So, a lot of that comes from Bentham's Bulldog or Bentham's newsletter. I wish he would pick consistent branding. Like my blog is Lance Independent, and then I'm Lance Independent on the blog. I don't pick a different name. So what do you call him? Anyway, so he got really popular for arguing for that. I think it even got on John Oliver, like what is it, last week tonight, whatever that show is. I think they even had a whole skit on the shrimp welfare thing. So, good for him for getting on there. That's one of his least objectionable things that I've seen him argue for. He just had an argument out about continental philosophy. I haven't read it yet. But it had a couple questionable things in it at least. So I'm going to have a look at that. Was it a daily show? It wasn't John Oliver? Wow. The Daily Show is bigger, right? That's wild if it was I think you might be right. You might be right about that. Wow. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Real issue.
It's a real issue. I do think that there is like a foothold for a realist response here. And that has to do with the fact that in order to be like binding in the right sort of way, there has to be some sort of epistemic access criterion, right? Like, I do think that
yeah, I looked it up. It is the Daily Show, and here it is. It's 5 months ago. Yeah, it's the Daily Show. Ronnie Ching explores the limits of effective altruism. You're absolutely right. That was my mistake. So now people listening to this are going to go, he's stupid. It was on the Daily Show. Was it John Oliver ever on the Daily Show, or was he on the Colbert Report? I don't even know. Whatever. But there's the video. I posted it. Cool. So check that out. It's a pretty funny video.
You know,
sorry, let's take it back a few seconds because I got distracted by that.
The fact that like binding in the right sort of way, there has to be some sort of epistemic access criterion, right? Like, I do think that I guess, you know, there's a debate about blameworthiness and moral ignorance to be, you know, so Gideon Rosen thinks that you could be morally blameless based on moral ignorance, not just descriptive ignorance, if you could not have attained the moral knowledge that's necessary. Aristotle disagrees. Aristotle thinks that it's sort of you're absolutely liable for acting on moral ignorance of any kind. And then like Liz Harman has like an intermediate position. So I do tend to think that at least, maybe I wouldn't go as far as Rosen, who thinks that you could even basic moral facts you could be ignorant of in a non-culpable way. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But it does seem like someone could be ignorant about the right position on abortion or something like that in a way where we wouldn't blame them, or at least we wouldn't want to blame them very much. So and it seems to me that like if there has to be a limit on, like, I don't think it makes sense for there to be moral facts that are impossible for like even an advanced civilization to uncover, because they just couldn't be binding in the right way. There would have to be some reasonable path for their uncovery. But I don't know what more to say about this. There's not a big literature on this issue.
Okay. Well,
I will absolutely take credit for pressing this issue. I don't know if I invented it, probably not, but cool. All right. Another point of agreement with Spencer.
Maybe I should do what I'm sort of known for doing these days, which is to wheel God in at this point. So, you know, like one thing I was thinking as you were saying this was that God can help with this and the skepticism concern as well, and the debunking stuff, right? So what I'm thinking here is that, well,
Okay, well, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. We'll see what JP has to say about bringing God into the scenario. So we'll have to wheel it back again. But this looks like it's diving into a whole new thing. We've got, another 20 minutes. So we'll do one more where I'll try to finish up the last 28 minutes of this. All right, wow. This is going to turn into a 4-parter. I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm looking at the clock, and it looks like it's about time for me to get upstairs and make lunch. And the family will be back soon. So I got to feed everybody. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. I appreciate everybody. Do like the video. If you liked the video, go check out the original video with JPA where he interviews Spencer. Again, if you do leave a comment, be polite. I'd love for people to get all over the internet and look up videos of moral realism. You'll often find me in the comment section critiquing people. Get in there, leave a comment. Just be polite. Don't be a jerk. Don't contribute to like YouTube toxicity in the comment sections. Do all that stuff. Thanks again for, let me find the person. Silly Neminis from Warlight. Thanks again for the tip. Appreciate it. And thanks everybody else for being here. And I will see you all again. The last thing I'll say is I really took to heart all the recommendations people made about me being back. I wasn't really planning a lot when I was coming back either. And so, yeah, you're seeing a lot of review videos from me, but I'm trying to get more stuff going. Trying to get guests on the channel. I've been in touch with a few people. So I'm going to go through your list, curate it, pick 4 or 5 people, I think, because I don't want to, send out 10 invitations and then have 8 or 9 people say yes, and then I don't have time for it. So I'll be trickling in guests and stuff on the channel as well. And it just I've had a few situations where I'm trying to line up a discussion and it's just not happening. So we'll see what else I could get on here as far as other content goes. But thanks everybody again for being here, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.